Most mortgage and real estate professionals, they need to do more work. They're trying to find the shortcuts. They're trying to figure out, how do I make more money with less work? And I tell people all the time, if you'll stop looking for the shortcuts and take that time and actually go do the work, you're going to get to where you want to go.
Planning on a Sunday for your week in advance, planning out your campaigns and saying, how are you going to address different buckets of clients and how are you going to be creative and how are you going to be different? Spending a couple hours on a Sunday doing that, like that was one thing in mortgage banking that changed my career.
You got to build a network. When you're walking around, like, my ex-wife used to get so frustrated with me. I would talk to the person at the gas pump next to me. I would talk to the checkout person at the grocery store. I'd talk to our server and, hey, how you doing?
You're gonna be shocked if you look at it. Everything you're saying is automated inside of it, from morning rituals to your 5 main goals to how you're gonna, apply those goals in your life. It's all about habits and just, automating those habits for you. And even like this step ladder, what are your 5 main goals? What is one thing you could do today to keep those goals moving? Welcome to the show, everybody. Thank you guys for being on tonight. We got a very, very special guest for you guys. We've been bringing special guests back to back. As I told you guys, Jay, who's a good friend of mine who I met in Vegas, introduced me to a lot of influential people in sales industry and the mortgage industry, and one of them is Phil Treadwell. And this will be the first time I really dive deep with Phil, and we're going live. And I'm going to be reading you real quickly what I found on his website. Phil Treadwell is an award-winning entrepreneur, national speaker, and podcaster. He has over 19 years of experience as a top performer in the mortgage and real estate industry, and he regularly collaborates with thought leaders from around the country. Phil has been coached and mentored by some of the business's elites and now shares his knowledge and experience as the founder and business mindset coach at M1 Academy, which was named number 4 of the top 10 mortgage coaching programs in 2023. In 2018, Phil launched the Mortgage Marketing Expert podcast, where he interviews guests who share firsthand experience and advice to help industry professionals build more modern and relevant businesses. The MME podcast regularly appears in the top 200 Apple Podcasts in the business section marketing category, and it's been listed in numerous publications as one of the top podcasts in the mortgage and real estate industry. Phil has spoken at dozens of events and contributed as an expert guest on over 100 other podcasts and social media shows. Some of his other awards and recognition include 40 Most Influential Mortgage Professionals Under 40, and that was in 2019, and Most Connected Mortgage Professionals in 2021 and 2022 by National Mortgage Professional Magazine. Top 20 Mortgage Professionals in 2020 by Yahoo Finance, and Top 10 Founders You Should Follow in 2024 by USA Today. It's a hell of an introduction if I ever heard one. Now, some of you might be asking, isn't this guy sort of like your competition? I'm a sales coach, mortgage coach, leadership coach. There is no competition, right? I want to learn from everybody I bring on the show. And when you live a life like this with no enemies, no competitors, and networking and meeting everybody to get better, you live a fulfilled life of never-ending growth. And that's the kind of life that I want to lead. So we're going to welcome him on the show. We're going to pick his brain as always. We're going off the top. I was going to start writing some stuff down. I wrote 4 words and stopped. I said, the academy and the community likes it off the top, and that's what we're going to do.
Well, cool, man. I appreciate you having me here. And I love what you said in there. Like, hey, isn't this guy a potential competition? Because I'm friends with so many people that are coaches, consultants, sales leaders, things of that nature. Man, when you have an abundance mindset, which is there's plenty of business out there for everyone that's willing to do the work. And so I love collaborating. I love learning from people. I love anybody that's out there trying to help business professionals, entrepreneurs execute and perform at the level they're capable of. That's what our mission is with M1 Academy. So, man, I'm excited to be here and then chop it up for a little bit.
I know, man. That's great. Let's jump straight into it, brother. How did you get into mortgages? It says 19 years you've been in there. Where did Phil start? How did you end up in mortgages? And where are you today?
Yeah, that's a big question. I'll keep it short. In college, was a store manager for Blockbuster Video. And so I had some management days back in the day. I
Okay.
had done a little bit of corporate sales, which is to say I was a truck driver recruiter, and then I was a telemarketer and did some door-to-door stuff. And my dad's a builder, and I wanted to take over his company, but he said, you need to think long and hard before you want to do this for 40 years. I want you to see what else is out there first. And I was finishing my degree in financial management, and I answered a newspaper ad. They were looking for someone with sales and management experience. I had both. Didn't even know it was a mortgage company. And a 30-minute interview turned into about a 3-hour conversation. And I remember the guy who owned the company at the time said, man, if you decide to do this, you're going to look back at this conversation one day and cuss me, because once you get mortgage and real estate, it's really tough to get out of it. And that'll be 20 years this summer.
Wow. So you started when Blockbuster was around.
Yeah, man. I my claim to fame is I had the first DVD new release wall in the state of Arkansas. I was in Fayetteville, Arkansas. I went to U of A, and man, that was just kind of when DVDs were really starting to get popular. And it was one of the funnest jobs I ever had. But I had to work every Friday and Saturday night, every holiday. You know, I remember Christmas Day, Thanksgiving Day, New Year's Day, when people get tired of the family, we'd open up about 3 p.m. and I'd work until midnight, and it wasn't really conducive to the lifestyle that I wanted. So I got out of retail.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this before I get into, because I also want to get into the timeline in the mortgage industry. Do you think it's an advantage or disadvantage for people that have been in the game a super long time? Because I find both ends of the spectrum. I find people that are, I hate to say it, but washed up, don't feel like doing the work anymore. I'm drained from mortgages. Or I find people that still do things that they've done 15, 20 years ago that all these, the new bloods are not doing. And they're like, these are things that I've been, conditioned to do. And they got, when you say like going back to the basics, the fundamentals, like I'm sure you in the Blockbuster days, you were doing yellow pages and pen and paper, and we didn't have all the automations, right? So like, do you think that experience is beneficial in your experience, or do you think that it kind of drains you out being in the mortgage industry that long?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you're exactly right. You've got a lot of people, as you said, that I'm going to do it this way because this is how I've always done it. And you have people that are beat up. But you also have, again, some of the new blood, some of the new kids in town that don't understand some of the old school success principles that will make them successful. You just have to apply it in a relevant way. And so whenever I started, there was no yellow page. I mean, there was yellow pages, obviously. I didn't do yellow pages I didn't buy leads. I walked around 9-10 hours a day and cold called real estate offices with black and white photocopied flyers. And I did that for almost 2.5 weeks before I had my first real conversation with a realtor. Now, coming from door-to-door sales, you had no reason to be there. They don't want what you're selling, and they had to pay you for it right then. I came to mortgage and real estate, and I was cold calling and stopping by realtor offices. I had a reason to be there. They wanted what I was selling, and they didn't have to pay me for it. So I'm like, this is easy, especially for the size of commission that I can make. And I share that because in today's day and age, what I find as a coach, and what I find, speaking all over the country, is that most mortgage professionals, most mortgage and real estate professionals, they need to do more work. They're trying to find the shortcut. They're trying to figure out, how do I make more money with less work? And I tell people all the time, if you'll stop looking for the shortcut and take that time and actually go do the work, you're going to get to where you want to go. So where I'm kind of unique is I got in really early. I'm 42 right now. I got in around 22, 23, and I was learning from baby boomers, right? I'm kind of the older millennial, and my brother was a Gen Xer, so I learned from older generations. But as the industry has grown and evolved and changed, I've still had an appetite for automation, for technology, for all these things, social media, that have made people successful. So I kind of take the old school tactics, the work ethic, that you've got to go through the numbers. You've got to understand that marketing gets someone's attention and sales is a different thing. It makes them a customer, and combine that in a more relevant way. That's where I think I kind of lucked out, if you will, in terms of when I was born. I got to learn the old school way, but I still had an appetite to want to learn new things. So it's been an advantage for me, where I think a lot of people that don't necessarily have that appetite or don't want to grow and evolve, regardless of the industry you're in, you're going to get left behind.
100%. And that's a great way to put it. You have to have the marketing, you have to have the ethic, and you have to have the skill to convert them in the sales sector. And if you could have all three, you're a very dangerous person. Yeah, like one of those things that you talk about, like the first thing I think about is like something as simple as Sunday planning. I think like planning on a Sunday for your week in advance, planning out your campaigns and saying, how are you going to address different buckets of clients, and how are you going to be creative, and how are you going to be different? Spending a couple hours on a Sunday everybody doing that. Like that was one thing in mortgage banking that changed my career. And I was like one of the only ones coming in with that kind of strategy and game plan while everybody was running in and just dialing, you know? What kind of, techniques and strategies do you find in this business help people the most?
One of there's two that I coach and teach a lot. The first one is around daily habits, non-negotiables. Obviously, one of the books behind me on the shelf is Atomic Habits, and he talks about stacking habits. What I talk about is stacking wins. Our mind only distinguishes between wins and losses, but not how big they are. So if I start my day with a routine, I actually wake up about 4:30, 4:45 every morning because I hate waking up early. I'm a night owl. I like to sleep in. What my first 10, 15 years of my mortgage career, I loved because I could sleep till 7:30, get up, get into the office, and still beat most of the realtor partners that I was working with, into the office. What I realized is the people that were crushing it were getting up early. That's the biggest win I get every day, and all it is a decision. Well, then I go to the gym, get on the treadmill, post some content, listen to a podcast, feed my mind, get my blood oxygenated, do some lifting. I say some affirmations, right? I stack some wins, go home and drink a protein shake instead of, eating a donut. By the time I start my first appointment, I've created some momentum. So even if the first call I'm on, if the first thing I do absolutely fails, my mind is like, okay, well, that was a loss, but you made your bed. That was when they cancel each other out and you still have momentum, and momentum creates more motivation. When we have a list of stuff and we're checking stuff off a list, we get excited and want to check more stuff off a list. So we can trick our mind into creating that momentum, and that creates that more motivation. But the other thing it does is it creates confidence. See, if we take some daily habits, if we take things that we need to do on our daily basis, we mix those outbound lead generation activities with the attraction marketing, with the branding things that we do. As we're doing those things, we realize that all of those little things we're doing on a daily basis are moving the needle way more than the losses do, which creates confidence. So I tell people, when you see someone that has swagger, when you see someone that's just absolutely crushing it, it's because they failed a lot more than you have, and they realize it's not that big of a deal. Failure's on the path to success. It's not the opposite of it. The opposite of success is excuses, is not doing the work. So all of my coaching clients, we sit down and we start carving out daily habits and non-negotiables. We help them find their why. We find their North Star, reverse engineer that into goals, attach activities to those goals. So whenever you start building your business, the tactical things, we know why we're doing what we're doing and where we're going. And then when you wake up every day, you have your habits, you have your calendar, and when you lay your head on the pillow at night, even if you didn't get the results you wanted to that day, it wasn't because you didn't do the work. And I'm trying to wave this flag all over, because it's in any industry, but especially in mortgage and real estate, it's tough right now. It's hard. It's supposed to be hard. That's how we have job security. That's why we get paid what we paid. If someone could just make the phone ring and all of them were pre-qualified people that, wanted to buy a house right then, and there was no issues, they wouldn't need loan officers. Same way with real estate agents. So there's job security in the fact that it's hard. But because it's hard, we have to remember you've got to do more work than you think that you do. And ironically, that's what's separating out people that are winning and losing. And it's not blind work, right? You need to create some efficiencies. Like you said, you need to have your scripts dialed in. You need to understand the types of leads that are coming in, where they're coming from, and what type of journey you need to take that client down when you're talking to them. But for most people, it's not that they don't know what to do. They're just not doing it for some reason.
That's just crazy, man, because Jay has me on like kind of this podcast tour, and like I interviewed Bill Mervin.
I know the name. I don't know him personally.
Anyways, all these people out there, like this is the first time me and you really have a conversation. Like everything you just said, if you go read the first chapter of my book, it's exactly the same exact stuff we're talking, momentum and preparation and the habits. And so like when you start meeting people that are super successful, you start realizing they're in the same exact realm of thinking. And like we haven't even got into the tactical stuff of mortgages yet. We're just still talking about the basic fundamentals of mindset and motivation, right?
And what's funny about that is I'm actually finishing my book right now. And my book is called What the Uncommon Have in Common. Because after doing a couple of hundred podcast episodes, being on a couple of hundred other podcasts and social media shows, having some of the best as coaches, as mentors, as friends, to your point, when you start talking to high performing people, uncommon people, people that understand that all success principles are the same. You just have to figure out how to apply them to your life and to your business. There are all these things that are similar stories. And so, as I've interviewed Gary Vee and Bradley and, Ryan Serhant and who's who throughout mortgage and real estate, I'm like, wait a minute, they've all had completely different journeys. They have different business focuses, yet they all have 3 or 4 or 5 things that are the same. And so that's really what my book is about, is these are the mindset, the habits, the message, the vision. These are what uncommon people, top producing, high performing people have in common. So you're exactly right. right, because that's the entire theme of the book that I'm getting ready to put out.
That's awesome, man. Well, I can't wait to read that book when it comes. So walk us through the mortgage journey. Where'd you start? Where'd you go? What kind of things did you experience through it?
Yeah, as I said, I answered that newspaper ad. They were a little independent mortgage banker. At the time, it was called Full Eagle, which meant they could manually underwrite FHA loans in-house. And you have to think at the time, 2003, 2004, subprime loans were really in its heyday. And I was fortunate enough to have a mentor that he taught me how to put a good file together, the fundamentals of the mortgage, how to create relationships, how to provide really good service. And so I went out there and was selling manual underwrite FHA loans with down payment assistance to get them in with practically no money, which was similar to these subprimes, only I was offering a 7.5% when they were offering 8.5 and 11 on an 80/20 loan. So I did about 60 units my first 12 months in the business. I think only 2 of them were over $100,000. So there was a lot of little loans in the market that I was in. Did that for a few years, started my own branch with another company, and that turned into kind of a net branch, a franchise. And I kind of used that to segue. I opened my own mortgage company, a little mortgage broker shop in around 2006, 2007. In hindsight, it wasn't the greatest decision to start a mortgage company as financial Armageddon was looming. And so in 2008, toward the end of 2008, I actually sold my company to Wells Fargo. They were by far the largest mortgage lender at the time. I think one of every 3 loans in the country went through one of their channels, retail, wholesale, or correspondent. And what I found there were a lot of lazy in-house retail loan officers. And so I kind of took the work ethic that I had being an independent mortgage banker, an independent mortgage broker, and really succeeded. I was a top producer in a 6 or 7 state region for them. But man, I hated the big bank world. It just didn't fit with me. So I left that and went to work for another company, kind of started my journey as an area manager, regional VP, national director for, mortgage bankers for independent mortgage companies. And in 2018, it really was 2017, I was a regional manager over a 4 or 5 state region. But I realized that when I got outside of markets that I'd worked in places that people didn't know me and people didn't know my company, my recruiting effectiveness went way down. And content marketing was really just kind of getting going. Neil Patel was talking a lot about SEO and content marketing was on the rise. So I kind of dabbled in it. And then I hear this crazy guy on social media, which turned out to be Gary Vaynerchuk, talking about a personal brand and content on social. So in late 2017, I started an Instagram page called Mortgage Marketing Expert. I didn't brand it to me. I didn't brand it to my company. But if you think about, I owned the domain is why I called it that. I own a lot of website domains, have a little bit of a domain addiction there. If you think about Instagram at that time, it was quote of the day, tip of the day, pick of the day. I'm like, we'll do a mortgage marketing tip of the day. And so I started putting those out. And after 30 days, we had about 1,000 people that were organically following the page. After 90 days, I started running out of stuff to say. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to start a podcast and I'm going to bring on mortgage marketing experts and use their quotes to kind of feed this Instagram page. Because I didn't think anybody would listen to a mortgage podcast. And what I knew was that if I could rub elbows with elite people, with influential people, that would rub off on my brand and that would help me recruit people because I'm offering them something of value. Hey, I can go work for this guy and he's going to help me build my business. Content repurposing wasn't a thing, but I very quickly realized that it needed to be. I launched it with about 6 guests, went to a big conference and kind of, grabbed everybody as they came off stage and booked them as guests. And I looked up and after 15, 20 episodes, we were doing thousands of downloads a month. And I'd had the who's who, Mount Rushmore of mortgage on the podcast and people were listening. And so it turned into, it kind of took on a life of its own and we started having bigger and bigger guests. And that kind of led into me speaking on panels at conferences and doing a little bit of speaking. So as I realized I was building my own personal brand, I was starting to create content at a much higher level. That helped me progress in my career as I went from an area to a region to a national director. And I started doing a little bit of coaching. Didn't think I wanted to do coaching. Frankly, I continued to monetize with the companies that I worked for. And then in 2022, as things, the market kind of fell out and people were really struggling, I hadn't originated personally since 2013. I didn't want to be a talking head in the industry that hadn't done it, in a decade. So I went and started a production team again. We grew really, really fast. We're in the top % of producers in about 6 or 7 months. months. And people were like, wait a minute, like companies are losing 40% of their production and you guys are growing. What are you doing? So I started a series of workshops, very tactical workshops towards the end of 2022. And what I realized with people coming out of that, they had the entire playbook. They knew exactly what to do. They had the scripts, but they still weren't getting the results that they should have been, or like I expected them to. And that's where I realized that I was underestimating some of the foundational pieces, some of the mindset piece. So at the end of 2022, I created M1 Academy. And M1 stands for Mindset First. I don't think mindset's the only thing that's going to make people successful, but I do think it's the most important thing, because if you're not applying some of these principles we're talking about and stacking your tactics on top of it, they're going to fall short, and you're not going to get the effectiveness and efficiency that you need out of it. So I had to make a decision. Do I continue in mortgage corporate world while building this thing on the side? And I realized I could be a hired gun at any time. And so about 18 months ago, a little more than that, we went full time in M1 Academy, which is what I do now. We do one-on-one and group coaching. I also consult for quite a few companies. And then we still continue to podcast, create content, and speak on stage. So that's kind of been my mortgage journey.
Well, that's awesome. It seems like we're on the same exact journey. You know, I'm working with a lot of companies right now and doing the weekly calls here, and then also have the Sales and Leadership and Mindset Academy, because I think all three are aligned together. So that's beautiful to see, man. And it seems like that's your passion, right?
It is. It's what I'm passionate about, mainly because so much of my career, I was 11, 12, 15 years younger than the next youngest guy in the room or gal. And so I always kind of got underestimated. I kind of got the pat on the head treatment. I remember one company, I'd been there a little over 5 years. There were 11 regions, and I was always the first or second most profitable in basis points and percentage, and, you know, second or third in dollars out of these 11 regions. But I was like ninth out of 11 in size, in volume. But I still, because I was a younger guy talking about, marketing and attention, talking about influence, and I wasn't prescribing you need to make 50 or 100 calls a day, and it's, nose to nose and belly to belly. I agree that business has been done, is being done, and will always be done based upon relationships. But how we get people's attention now has changed, and it's continued to change. And so I've had a little bit of chip on my shoulder, because the mortgage industry is a little bit of an older, aging industry. And I think it's over the last 5 years or so, really since COVID, we've seen a kind of a resurgence of a younger generation being a part of it. And I'm very passionate about taking some of these old school success principles and bridging the gap and making them more modern and relevant.
Yeah. So for the people listening and that are going to be listening, let's get into that. I mean, what are some of the things that these professionals that are going to be listening to this should be doing right now to connect the bridge between the modern and the gap between the old?
I think it's a couple of things we talk about. One is work ethic. You've got to work. You've got to have your habits and non-negotiables. You've got to have time blocks. You've got to work more than you think you do. And it's funny, because I think if someone actually, and I'm not advocating you need to work 18-hour days, 70-hour weeks, whatever. I do a lot, because I'm passionate about building my business. But if someone actually put in a real solid 8 hours of work on a daily basis, 5-6 days a week, they'd be surprised about what happens. I think we underestimate the amount of time that we waste. So one of them is around work ethic. The other thing is, what I just said, business is about relationships. A mutual friend of ours, Brad Lee, he talks about your net worth is directly tied to your network. And that's so important. That's how you and I met, through a mutual friend who's also very successful. And I think that the more we collaborate both within our industry and go out and meet people in the community, the more people you know, the more opportunities you have to talk about what you do, and in turn get referrals from people. I had a mentor one time that said, every dud knows a stud. We're too often not spending time with people because we don't think they can do anything for us. And so you have to do relationships, but where it's a more modern and relevant way that I think companies are having a hard time getting their mind wrapped around is, nobody cares what name, what company is on your business card. In almost all instances, they care about who you are. A personal brand is about the person, not the brand. We're so quick to want to build this larger than life look, or this, huge company, or this thing, because we think that gives us credibility, when really what people want is to be relatable. Like they want us to relate to them. The Brand Builders Group, Rory and AJ Vaden in Nashville, Tennessee, they've built brands for people like Ed Milet Gillette, the author John Gordon, Lewis Howes, the School of Greatness podcast, and on and on. They commissioned a group of PhDs to do a study around marketing and branding. And what they found was that about 2/3 of people wanted to see more of a personal brand from their doctor, their employer, their attorney, their financial advisor. And what they found in common was that those are groups of people that have a little bit of anxiety when we have to work with them as a service provider, right? We're kind of exposed. Well, in my industry, in mortgage and real estate, it's the same way. And so kind of the tie down from that was the higher the requirement of trust in any profession, the bigger the need for a personal brand. People want to be able to be relatable. And I think that that's something that a lot of older school folks think, if we have this big company with credibility, people are going to trust us because we work there. And it's the generations have changed. They want things in common. They want a cause that they can kind of rally around. And those are traits that we put off with people. You can't have a relationship with a company. You can't have a relationship with an individual. So how we put out content, how companies can rally around helping their individual teams build a brand, how they can help them create content, that's actually what's going to move the needle in a community way more than just advertising the brand. And I've even heard of companies that recruit say, no, you don't have to spend any money on marketing. We pay for everything. What they mean by that is, we're going to do all this marketing about the company and you should be glad that you're here. And in today's day and age, I think that that's the wrong thing. So it's how we get attention. It's understanding that when it comes to sales and higher trust, bigger ticket items, a lot of times it's not about just closing someone. In most instances, it's not about just closing someone. It's understanding what's significant about this purchase for them. How important would it be for them to become a homeowner? And finding out what they're really trying to accomplish, and then letting them know, hey, I can create a strategy to help you get there. Because at the end of the day, people pay for solutions to their problems. They pay with their time, they pay with their attention, they pay with their money. So if we can get good at solving problems and understanding that we need to show people how we've solved problems for other people while creating that relationship, that's what's going to create the draw that they want to do business with us. Because if someone's not, if they're not doing enough sales, if they're not getting enough volume, if they're not getting enough, engagement in their content on social, it's because they're either not solving enough problems for people, they're not clear about what problem it is that they solve. Either they're not clear, they're not, articulating that very well, or three, people just don't believe they can solve their problem. And I think companies have missed that in terms of, we need to rally around our people that are actually on the front lines creating strategies, because a lot of people don't necessarily know what problem it is that they have. But in my industry, when you talk about net worth, when you talk about, passive income, cash flow, those are problems that can be solved with real estate if you show people a strategy on how to do it.
So that's a lot of good stuff. Are you recommending that companies, instead of advertising their brand and paying for the marketing and giving you the website for you're recommending that the company focuses on every single individual and builds them a custom brand, or helps them build their own custom brand?
I don't think they necessarily have to help them build their own custom brand, but you've got to create an ecosystem that makes it easy for them to be able to. In mortgage, there's always this compliance concern. And I think that they hide behind compliance as an excuse to not go out and allow them to create content and brand themselves, even if it's independent from the company. I'm not saying they're pretending to be with another company or they're acting like they own their own company, but saying that someone's personal social media where they're talking about their life, where they're sharing content, has to always be branded with the company or have all this stuff on there isn't there. I also think that you can provide resources internally for people to make it easier for them to create and share content, and make it easy for them to brand themselves in a way that's going to be more relevant to the audience, is the right answer for a lot of companies that are struggling. Now, I understand that they're not independent contractors, they're not self-employed, they're W-2 employees. So all of this is in context, but the most successful companies that I see are out there enabling and helping their people go out and show up more so than just focusing on the company name of the brand themselves.
You're 100% right, because I think of two companies. The first company I was at for 8 years was Rocket Mortgage. And over there, you'd have to brand Rocket. It's not like you could go out and do your own brand, because you're retail and you're W-2'd and their big red machine has to keep moving, and you don't want to say anything wrong applied with their brand because they're just too big. But now one of the companies I consult, West Capital, I'm wearing their shirt right now. They just hit $1 billion in volume a few weeks ago, their biggest year ever. So while people are saying they're struggling, losing 40%, 80% of the companies I work with are having their best months of their careers and their best year to dates, And one thing that they do, and they're independent 1099, is they teach social media. They bring people in that, like, they have What's a Mortgage on their team, and What's a Mortgage generates 100,000 leads off his social media. And what does he do? He goes to the sidewalk, pulls out his phone, and he makes a video about mortgage mortgages and the feds, and he's been doing that for, a year, 2 years now, and he's built a cult of a community. And instead of them saying, oh, send the social media, they say, no, here's someone that does social media very well. Here's some things you could do. They have me training them on social media. My biggest thing with social is I tell people, you got to find what's unique to you. I had a gentleman who's a realtor, he's in his 60s, telling me like, I barely know how to use my phone. My daughter's making me my Instagram. I said, that's your first video. Have your daughter pull out the video. And I'm making my dad his first video because he doesn't know how to use Instagram. Hi, my name is James. I'm a realtor. Like, you could make that your personal brand. So I try to tell people a lot of times what you think is your weakness is actually your personal brand. So I love what you're saying.
Well, so something I say from stage that gets a lot of reaction from people. I spoke in Virginia on Monday and then did a panel for that same company yesterday before I flew back. And I say from stage a lot that so many people aren't creating video, aren't creating content because they don't like how they look or they don't like how they sound. And my response to that is something that everyone needs to pay attention to. That's how you look and that's how you sound. And that's okay because people like you anyway. And so to your point, what someone sees as a weakness can actually become a strength, because if they start doing content when they haven't at all, they're going to get a lot of eyes on them because people are like, wait a minute, Phil, I haven't seen him post content or do video. All of a sudden, where'd he come from? And I've done this over and over with clients. And I actually have one of my partners in M1 Academy, or my partner, she has a small stake in the company. She was in Denver, was a coaching client and became a coach and part of what we're doing. She was one of those ones that I don't like how I sound. We finally kind of got her doing more videos and more content and getting over that. And just about a month ago, because she understands that you want to share relatable things, she stitched a TikTok, and the TikTok was, hey, for those of you that have twins out there, have you ever been concerned about like mixing them up or something like that? She stitched it and said, hey, well, let me tell you a quick story. When my husband and I were, in the hospital, we were concerned that baby A and baby B, like the wrists break, that we may actually have switched them up. And her daughter was like, wait, what? That ended up going viral. I think she has 8 or 9 million views on it. She's been interviewed by People Magazine, The Today Show, Newsweek, Daily Mail, all these places. And again, I'm not an advocate for people trying to go viral's sake, but what's happened is she's had so many people that have seen the video that she's reconnected with on a personal level, so many realtors or referral partners that she hadn't talked to that she became top of mind, that not only has she created more followers, she's been able to reconnect and parlay that into business results. But that never would have happened had she just been so concerned about how she sounded on video that she didn't go out and create content. So to your point, a lot of times the weakness that we think we have ends up being one of our biggest strengths.
So you know how they say, like, when you buy a blue Mustang, you start seeing blue Mustangs everywhere?
Yeah.
So I'm having twins, and I heard twins 3 times today. So it's just crazy.
Congratulations.
Thank you, man. But that story is very unique in a sense, because even like Matt Rife, who's a comedian, posted for 3 years, never got anything, was about to give up. One TikTok video blew up, and now he's getting paid millions to travel the world and do comedy, all from one TikTok video. My biggest TikTok video I ever had, there was 2 of them. One of them was making a DoorDash driver get in the ice barrel with me, and he actually did it for, $50, $100, whatever it was that I gave him, and it blew up. And then another video was when I got robbed in Cancun, and that had nothing to do with mortgages or sales or coaching, but it was getting so many views I had to delete it because it was just a long story. But anyways, people like vulnerable, people like real, and you could even apply that on the phone with your clients. You know how you said you jump back in the industry to prove that you still have it as a coach, which I think is super important. I think a lot of times people ask me, why are you different than any other mortgage coach? I say, because I still originate. That's why I'm different. I have the awards. I've done 300 closings in a year. I'm not running from it. I'll still do it. I'll grab a headset anywhere I'm at, any place, anytime. And that's what I'm doing with West Capital right now. I'm actually, getting back in the game so I could renew their trainings and stuff like that, originating. But every client I talked to today, I told them I'm having twins. Like, all these stories and stuff that I share with you, I share with the clients. Same things I'll share on social media. All of this thing in an ecosystem connects, right? It's all about being authentic.
I'll tell you a quick story. Whenever I started that production team, and I'm not actively originating now, but I did for about a year, just again, to prove that the concepts that we were coaching and teaching were how you get ahead in this type of market. As I was kind of developing potential realtors and referral partners, I realized that we had a mutual friend in common. So I had him make a warm introduction. It took me about 2 weeks, and she agreed to a 30-minute Zoom. So I went all over her social media to try to find some things in common, because just as a side note, we talked about marketing gets someone's attention, but effective marketing is taking that attention and balancing it with trust. So you also have the 2 ways to create trust: or find something in common with someone, or give them something of value without asking anything in return. Well, in this situation, the way I wanted to create an element of trust is find things in common. Well, she was training for a half Ironman. Well, I used to do sprint and Olympic distance triathlons. So of that first 10 minutes, all we did was talk about triathlons. The second 10 minutes, I had seen on her social media feeds, she had just switched from EXP to Reel. This was several years ago before the mass exodus that's recently happened. And I asked her, I said, I don't fully understand their models totally. What made you switch? Well, as she was talking about that, I was able to learn the structure of her team, where her leads came from, what they were focused on, that type of thing. And the last question, I said, well, I really just wanted to get to know you, but I'd love to know, what's your focus for this next quarter or two? And when you ask someone what their focus is, more often than not, they'll give you a pain point. They'll give you a problem that you can solve. And what she said, again, this is first or second quarter of 2022. She said, because we've got, 10 offers on almost every property, we're having to work with 3 or 4 times the amount of buyers to get the same amount of houses under contract while we're doing all of our listings. And my showing agent on my team, she'd already told me, is the one that really works our database with our CRM and our outbound calls and things. So he hasn't had a chance to do some of that. So we're going to pay one of these platforms, like Agentology or Structurally or Verse.io, to go work some of these leads and help convert it. And I said, well, hey, before you spend money, I have a really strong CRM. We've built a lot of campaigns and journeys that we can do, voicemail drop, ringless voicemail, text message, video message, emails, things like that. Why don't we build you a couple of campaigns, see if we can convert some of those leads for you? Because she said she had like 800 warm leads of people that they talked to that they needed to follow up with. And I said, then the ones that don't convert, you can, pay to have converted. Well, it took several weeks. She agreed to it, thought it was a great idea. It took several weeks of continued follow-up, which there's a tip. You got to follow up with people. They finally sent my team and I a list of 120 of their warmest leads and said, don't even worry about doing, anything with us. Just tell them we referred you, and anyone that reaches back out, get them pre-approved before you send them back to us, and we'll go show them a house. We ended up closing like 10 or 12 million dollars off of that list from one 30-minute Zoom conversation because we found a problem to solve. And so I think what people miss the boat is we're trying to fight over referral or one deal, when if we can focus on finding things in common where we build some of that trust, then all of a sudden the things that we want to know about someone are there. Where if I'd spent 30 minutes trying to sell myself, we never would have done any business together.
All about the relationship. So I always say, provide value outside of your product or service, and you will get value inside of your product or service.
That's right. 100%.
All right. I love that. What do you have feedback, or what's like your biggest tip for people listening that do lead buys?
I have not done a lot of lead buys historically. I've always been predominantly referral based through a database or through realtors. Although I have competed a lot with, people that have gone online and they're online leads, so they have people calling them. One of the things that I say, I don't care, because the conversation that I've seen a lot when it comes to lead buys or online leads is speed to lead, right? Whatever percentage is goes with the first person they talk to. The studies behind it show that only works if someone doesn't come along that has a unique value offer, something that you said, what's unique about you. So what I spend a lot of time talking to people is, when someone asks what you do, don't just say you're a loan officer or a mortgage advisor, because the very first question that people ask almost all the time is, well, what are rates doing right now? Or what's the market look like? So my response when we built our team and someone said, what do you do? I said, I have a mortgage practice that helps people build real estate wealth. We were your BREW team, and that acronym BREW was Build Real Estate Wealth. And so they're like, oh, interesting. How do you do that? And we let them know that most loan officers just do loans, and we do, but we understand a mortgage is one of the largest debts that most people get into. And so we feel like we have a responsibility to help our clients not only manage that debt, but also the real estate assets attached to it to help them achieve their financial goals and ultimately build real estate wealth. And it changes the conversation whenever we find out why they're actually trying to buy, and we offer them a strategy, even if someone's offering them a lower rate, even if they've talked to someone else, that mental, the subconscious of, yeah, but maybe I close on this house, but are they actually helping me achieve this bigger goal that most of them really have? So that would be my advice to people that are doing lead buys, is when you reach out to folks, say, hey, you probably talked to some other lenders. The reason that I'm calling is, independent of other lenders, we actually help create strategies for people to build wealth with real estate or create financial security through home ownership, some type of a unique value, so that they understand you're different, you're unique. And if you can have that conversation and let them know, say, really what I want to say is, congratulations that you're in the home buying journey. So that's awesome. But what's significant about this home purchase for you? How important would it be for you to be a first-time home buyer if they are? And wait, because what they'll say is, well, I want to own property. Hey, that's awesome. It's part of the American dream. Owning property is still alive and well as far as the American dream goes. But what would be important about this purchase? And this is a real conversation. The lady told me that she'd called about down payment assistance. The second thing she said is, well, I have a boyfriend. She was a middle-aged lady. I have a boyfriend who owns a home. I want to own a home. So if in a couple years we get married, we can buy a house together and keep these as rental properties. I said, hey, that is awesome. Now we're talking about investment real estate. We're talking about passive income. Would that be significant for you and your family to have passive income? And then the real reason came out. She said, my grandparents made a go of it and they owned properties. They had a really tough life, but they made something of themselves. When they passed that down to my parents and aunts and uncles, they all squandered it. So my cousins and I feel like it's up to us to change our family tree. So she called about down payment assistance. She said she wanted to own property, but there was all these other things that she actually wanted to accomplish. So when we found that out, we were able to talk to her about the strategy of how to do that, as opposed to a lender just saying, well, here's the rate, here's how to get through the process. So I don't care if you're getting a referral from a realtor, if you're calling a lead buy, you've got to be different. You have to find the problem that they're really trying to solve for and show them the solution, and they will stick with you.
100%. I was given a personal brand today, like, you know, because I work with like Charles Schwab clients for a few years. I said, my goal is to catapult you and your family to the next level. Whether that means I help you out today or not, that's my only goal by the end of this call. And there's people that didn't really make sense for them. And I still gave them advice and feedback, and I still spent time. And then they'd give me a phone number, or they're going to call me back in the future. So I think the theme here is, you know, providing a unique value that the next phone call is just not going to have. Now that's lead buys. There's also people listening, Phil, that say like, what is he talking about? Build a network and referrals. Like, how does somebody do that that's listening that doesn't really know what you're talking? Besides, like, even realtors, like, you know, I have a training for realtors called, you know, going from the side chick to the main chick. And it's like, it's a funny way of saying like, you don't have to be the realtor's main person up front, but you could keep giving value as a side person long enough until they're like, damn, this person's always showing up and my person's getting comfortable. Let me give them a shot. Then you can earn your opportunity. So like, what is your like greatest advice for people listening? How do they build a network? Where is the network? What do they do when they find the network? Like, what are the steps here?
So you've got to be everywhere. You've got to build a network in terms of when you're walking around. Like, you know, my ex-wife used to get so frustrated with me. I would talk to the person at the gas pump next to me. I would talk to the checkout person at the grocery store. I'd talk to our server and, hey, how you doing? You know, it's kind of crazy weather out here. And I would start conversations. Sometimes it would lead to, what do you do? And then I had that line, what I call a grandma statement. Grandma statement is a mission statement about what you do that's so simple, even your grandma understands it. So when someone said, what do you do? I said, I have a mortgage practice that helps people build real estate wealth. As you have those little conversations, just say, hey, listen, we put out some good information about the market and home buying and really all kinds of stuff. You know, we're not salesy or spammy. You know, let me get a name and email address from you. We'll add you to the list. You know, who knows? Maybe you know somebody that you know, can benefit from it. And if you just go out and do that, and there was a quick story of a guy that about 12 or 13 years ago, when he started in the business, his boss said, you're going to work on all my loans for me for a year. I'm going to pay you a salary, and all you're going to do, and to get your salary, is go out and do this. And he built a database of people everywhere he went. If you think about it, we all have 300 or 400, 500 names on our phone. We have hundreds of friends on Facebook and Instagram. We all have a database. We just don't know that we have a database. And then what happens is you start working that database. You start sending a text message that says, hey, Ace, listen, I know you know I'm in the mortgage business, but what you may not know is my team and I actually help create strategies for people to build wealth with real estate. I'd love to share some details and get your opinion on what I'm doing, just to see if you have any feedback. And you may know of somebody that's a person I should talk to. If we did that and worked our database, then now what happens is when you reach out to a realtor, you say the same type of thing. Hey, Ace, we connected on social media. We commented on, each other's posts, or, I'd kind of connect with you a little bit. I wanted to reach out because I have a whole database of people, and a lot of them don't have a realtor that they work with. I'd love to get some more information about what you're doing, see if our goals align, and I may be able to give you some at-bats as well. And if we just do that and start talking to people, leads happen. If you want to close more deals, you need more leads. To get more leads, you need to have more conversations. So all of our activity is around, how do we start more conversations? Engage with other people's content on social media. Start talking to people when you're in the community. Go to events and network with people. All of those are going to lead to conversations. And see, the best part of this is, even with realtors, I love your having the side chick becoming the maid chick, or whatever it is. Can't tell you how many realtors are going to say, oh, I'm already working with a lender. Hey, Ace, totally. I mean, realtor realtor of your caliber, I would expect that you have a really solid relationship with a lender. I'm definitely not trying to infringe on that. What I want to talk about is how you and I can create more business for you on top of that and give you different opportunities to potentially refer to me. Is that something you're open to? If they say no, they're not someone you wanted to work with anyway. They're not looking to grow. That's not who you want. So these are basic things. We overthink networking. We already have a network, and we all know 10 or 15 people really, really well. Well, all of them know 10 or 15 other people really, really well, and on and on. It's basic circle marketing. So instead of trying to sell those folks, everyone loves to give their opinion. So if you're just sharing what you're doing to get their opinion, they're more open to listen, and you're indirectly selling them. They may be somebody that wants to talk to you, but like my old mentor said, every dud knows a stud. They may know someone that you should talk to. And it's about, as you're putting out content and building your brand, that's going to convert those conversations at an even higher level.
I love it. What if people say like, oh, well, I'm not talkative like you and Phil, I don't just go out there and shake hands and talk to the waiter and the waitress, and people that, maybe they haven't had that personality in their life, which I know a lot of people. Like, you can't tell my wife to go to a restaurant and just start, making conversation sober. She'd have to have a couple drinks in her and then feel good, and then the equation would have to all line up, So what do you say to those people?
There's a tough love answer, and then there's a more politically correct answer. And I'll start with the tough love answer. It depends if you want to succeed in sales. If you want to succeed in building your business, you're going to have to talk to people. So you have to do some type of a lead generation activity. If that's not talking to people, then it's sending text messages. So the question is, maybe you create a Facebook community online. Maybe you create a WhatsApp community. You can go out and provide content to people and put them in a community where you don't just have to go talk to people. But if you want to succeed, you have to have people some way or another. So I would say go do the reps and get good at it. Number one, a boxer trains 5,000 minutes for every 1 minute that they spend in the ring. Are we practicing our scripts? Are we practicing talking to people? If you walked around and talked to people in the community, 9 out of 10 of them aren't going to lead to a business conversation. But then you've practiced getting to know people and having organic conversations. So when you're in the ring and you have an opportunity to talk to someone that's important, you're not stumbling over your words. So the more politically correct, the other tough love thing is maybe you should go work in operations if you love the mortgage business, want to help people, dream of home ownership. But even there, you're going to have to talk to someone. So it's not about what we're naturally good at. It's can we build skill around it? So maybe you're good at writing. You don't want to talk to people. You're naturally good at writing. Build some skill around that. Written content is making a resurgence. You don't even have to do video. You could do a picture post, a graphic post, and put some long form copy, right? You can go out and add value to people, but you've got to be self-aware about what that is. All of my report cards were A's and B's, and at the bottom said talks too much. Well, joke was on them. I figured out a way to monetize the fact that I like to talk too much.
And would you recommend that they have to find their niche value first before they start shaking hands, or they could just start shaking hands now and figure it out?
I think it's an and, not an or. I think through those conversations, they're going to find that organic thing that comes out of them. They do need to find their why. Why do you do what you do? And what I mean by that is you've got to ask that 3 or 4 times. It's not just about helping people. It's not just about making a lot of money. What's important about that? Our why comes from our past, typically something that happened to us or didn't happen to us that drives why we want to do this professionally. Either your parents built a real estate portfolio and you saw them make a lot of money with it and you want to do that and show other people, or they were terrible with money and you had to go learn it on your own. Find your why, and that will lead you to that unique value offer. I don't think people are lazy. I think we're pointing at something that, and Gary Vee said this, there's not people that are lazy. There are people that have found something they don't like doing. So what is it you like to do? If we like it, we're probably have an element of natural talent. We're pretty good at that. So build skill around that thing that you like doing, so that when you don't want to do it, you're more likely to go ahead and push yourself to do it. But again, the opposite of success is excuses. I had another mentor that said any excuse will do. It doesn't matter what the excuse is. If you're going to make an excuse, they're all the same. So if someone doesn't like talking to people, cool. How are you going to start conversations then? How are you going to build a network? That can be content, that can be social. Those are low-hanging fruit because they're the most approachable way for most people to do that. But you got to do something.
It's just value, man. Somebody told me today off a lead buy, man, you guys are just blowing me up. How'd you get my number? I said, I'm so sorry for that, man. This is actually the first call and it's going to be the last call I ever give you. Just so you know how I got your information. It was from blah, blah, and blah. And this is what I do. This is how long I've been in the industry. Store my number if you ever need anything. And by the way, here's a website you could go to take your name off all those lists so they stop calling you. He called me and he wanted to talk right after. He's like, I really appreciate it. So like, you like Alex Hermazi?
Oh yes, of course.
All right, man. I really like this guy. Okay. I met him through Brad as well. And his journey's been very inspiring because he shares his journey with everybody. So just to give everyone listening an example of where his emails have went from the beginning till now. He started off blasting emails for book sales, his consulting company, things like that. Through his journey, this is the kind of email he sent a few days ago. What I'm working on right now, media-wise. I made 6 videos in the last 2.5 weeks that are deep business. You'll note that the views on them is somewhat staggered. The more conceptual ones with higher views are the more tactical, and the more tactical ones have lower views. I don't see that as meaning tactical equals less good. I just see that as tactical applies to fewer businesses while all businesses gain value from a concept. Sharing these thoughts to provide insight for you on making content. Number 2, looking at my best videos on my YouTube channel, many of them were keynote talks, so I decided to make more of those in slide format. I present them in my stage in my HQ to my team only. That's why the room looks like it's empty in parentheses. After doing it, I don't think it was about the slides per se. I think there's something about having a live audience that makes those talks special. Number 3, I'm trying to figure out how to have a live audience, ideally in person. When I figure it out, I'll let you know. By the way, something you can do right now to have a return on investment on this email is credit card processing. A lot of businesses pay credit card processing fees of 3 to 4%. They don't charge processing fees. If that's you, consider doing so. If you make 20% margins and you add 4% fees, you increase your profit from 20 to 24%. It won't affect your close rates, but it will affect your bottom line. Deploy and enjoy, just win. Alex Ramazi. Like, that email was like literally just giving me value after more value and not asking for anything in return. And do you think he has to do that at this level?
No, he doesn't.
And he's still doing it at this level. And this has been like 6, 7 in a row of the kind of emails. And if you go to his videos, they've been all fire lately. They're like strictly straight value. And he's taking out all of the fat out of everything else. And he's doing it right. And I share that with everybody because that's where the world is going right now. Being authentic, being vulnerable, giving value without expecting any value in return. That's where it's going. And that's in content. That's in communication with your people. That's in everything. So it's really inspiring having you on the show, man. I love talking to like-minded people. And like, how are we even on this show? You know, Jay hooked us up and he didn't even have to do that for me, but he provided that value to me because he's like, you need to network more. What are you doing? He's like, it's good that you're putting your all into your companies and to your community, but like, there's other people out there that need to hear your voice. And now he has me on a podcast tour, 13 podcasts in a row. I'm like, damn, I should have asked Jay a long time ago, you know? And that was me staying in my shell thinking I'm doing everything that I'm doing. So there's even growth, you know, for people like me and you at all times. We're always growing. So listen, for people out there that are listening to this and they're like, because you're a big motivation mindset guy, they're like, I know I need to do this. I've heard it before. This is the stuff I have to do, but they're just not getting over that edge. How do you help them either find their why or refocus on their why? What are your steps you go through with people? Because I know it's one of the first things you do in your academy. Could you explain to people, anyone listening that's struggling with finding that motivation, what do you have to say to them?
Yeah. So, I mean, motivation, mindset, why, they're all linked, but they're all a little bit different. Again, your why comes from your past. You got to ask yourself honestly, what's the reason behind you wanting to do this as a profession? And what is it you want to offer people in terms of value, short of just making money? You can go do money and it's easy to make money, right? Why are you here? Why are you doing this? In terms of how do you create motivation every day? Well, there's a difference between motivation and drive. You know, drive happens even when you don't want to do it, right? Motivation comes and go. That's the spark that will create the flame of drive. And you have to want something really badly. 92% of people do not achieve the goals that they set for themselves on an annual basis, statistically. The first reason is clarity. They're not super clear about what it is they want, what that goal is. And the second reason is they just don't want it bad enough. So what is it that you want really badly? What's your North Star? And what I mean by North Star is what's the ideal version of you? What do you look like? What do you talk like? What's your financial situation? Where do you live? What are your relationships with your friends and family? All of those things. And then we want to reverse engineer that into milestones. What's the path at a really high level to get there so that you can carve out that first step? And that first step is your first goal. It's the goals that you want to attach your habits and your activity to. But in the same time, and this may sound contradictory, what most people do or need to do is focus on the process more so than the outcome. If we'll focus on the process of being able to add more value, like what does it take? What do I need to do to add more value to everyone that I talk to? What do I need to do to become better at talking with people? What do I need to do to become better at creating content, creating a better loan process for people, articulating my message? If we'll focus on the process more so than the outcome, what happens is we become the person that the outcome is easy for. But we try to, I get questions all the time. Well, how many times do I need to post? How many phone calls do I need to make? It's always more. I don't care how much you're doing it, it's always more, because if you're asking the question, you're not getting the result. But if we stop focusing on the result and focus on the process of becoming better, we turn into the business professional, we turn into the person that the outcome ironically just happens to. And so to go through that process, we have to fixate on something we want really badly. And it doesn't have to be some moral high ground. Maybe you want to wear a Rolex. Maybe you want to drive an exotic car. You want a beach house. You want to retire your spouse or pay your parents' house off. It can be a material thing. I don't care what it is, but you've got to want it bad enough that when the motivation wears off, you have a drive to go do the work, right? The gap between where we are and where we want to be is nothing more than a decision that we're going to do what it takes. Tony Robbins says we've not actually made a decision unless it creates new action. So how do you make the decision, right? We have Uncle Bob and Aunt Sue that was like, oh, when they've made their mind up, there's no changing their mind. We can do that too, but it has to be attached to something that we want.
I love that. Phil Treadwell, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being on the show, man. You absolutely killed it. I made this sales planner, which you're gonna like be shocked if you look at it. Everything you're saying is automated inside of it, from morning rituals to your 5 main goals to how you're gonna, apply those goals in your life. It's all about habits and just, automating those habits for you. And even like this step ladder, what are your 5 main goals? What is one thing you could do today to keep those goals moving, right? It has a hot list and follow-up with the execution list. So like I made this, so like, look, even if you don't work with me in the future, this is like, I made it because people used to tell me, what makes you successful in sales? What makes you successful? I came up with 7, 8 things, and I put it in this planner because I couldn't find anything like it. And then I got feedback from people and I doubled the size of it. Now, some people tell me like, yo, it's too much to fill out. I'm like, it takes you 15 minutes in the morning to prepare your mind for the day. Is it worth the investment to you? And do you know what that means? So I'm going to send you one of those as a gift for being on the show, man. Truly appreciate it. We'll drop your Instagram and everything handle and the description for the Academy. And hopefully we'll launch this on the YouTube in a couple of weeks. Thanks so much for being on again, Phil. We appreciate you, brother.